You think small tribes scattered across frozen tundra just got lucky avoiding genetic disasters? Wrong. Ice Age groups developed systems so precise they could track bloodlines back 7 generations without writing a single word. They built marriage networks spanning hundreds of miles of glacier. They created rules that modern geneticists call nearly perfect. How did Stone Age hunters solve what took us lab equipment to understand? 25,000 years ago, Europe froze solid. Ice sheets crushed forests into tundra. Humans survived in scattered bands of 20 to 50 people. Do the math. Your dating pool just became your death sentence. Marry too close, your kids die young. Marry too far, you die traveling. Get it wrong, your entire bloodline vanishes under the ice. Archaeological sites from Dolny Vestinies to Sungir show something remarkable. These weren't random camps, they were connected. Identical bead patterns appear in caves 400 miles apart. Same carved ivory, same ochre sources, same flint techniques. Someone was moving between these groups, someone was keeping track. If you value documented prehistoric history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from archaeological genetics and paleoanthropology studies. Now back to the story. The Gravettian people left us the evidence. At Przedmosty in Czech Republic, geneticists pulled DNA from 29,000-year-old bones. What they found changed everything. These weren't isolated inbreeders. The genetic diversity matched populations 10 times larger. Somehow, 30 people maintained the genetic health of 300. The secret sat in their teeth. Strontium isotopes don't lie. Your molars lock in the geology of where you grew up. Scan a Gravettian jaw and you see childhood in one valley, adulthood in another. These people moved, girls especially. 80% of adult females in sites like Irene Candide came from somewhere else. Boys stayed home, girls traveled. But how far could you travel on foot across frozen wasteland? Archaeological evidence gives us the answer. Amber from the Baltic shows up in caves near the Mediterranean. Seashells from Atlantic coasts appear in mountain sites. These trade routes stretched 1,500 miles. A marriage network could piggyback on commerce. Your future spouse might come from beyond the horizon. The timing wasn't random either. Radiocarbon dates from settlement layers show coordinated movement. Multiple sites across Europe show abandonment and reoccupation in the same narrow windows. Spring thaw in March. Autumn, freeze in October. Twice yearly, groups converged at neutral sites. Massive camps like Kostenki held hundreds of people from dozens of bands. At Kostenki 4, archaeologists found something extraordinary. 7 hearths, arranged in a perfect circle. Around each hearth, distinct tool styles, solitrine blades next to Gravettian points next to Eastern European leaf shapes. This wasn't one group camping. This was a gathering, a marriage market, a genetic exchange. The numbers tell the story. Each hearth could serve 8 to 12 people. 7 groups of 10 meant 70 hunters, gatherers, warriors, and children mixing bloodlines. Carbon dating shows these gatherings happened for 3,000 consecutive years. Same location, same season, same genetic purpose. You can see the system in their art. Venus figurines aren't random fertility symbols. Map their distribution and you see the network. Identical carving styles hop from site to site, following river valleys and mountain passes. These weren't religious icons. They were calling cards, proof of membership in the breeding network. The Willendorf Venus contains mammoth ivory from 500 miles north. The Lausel Venus uses ochre traced to Spanish caves. The Dolny Vestinies Venus holds fired clay from local deposits, but carved with tools from distant quarries. Each figurine carried signatures of its origin network. The mathematics worked perfectly. Computer models of Pleistocene populations show 20-person bands need outside partners every generation to survive. Archaeological genetics confirms it happened. DNA from Gravettian sites shows effective population sizes between 200 and 500 people. The scattered bands functioned as one large breeding population. They built memory systems that could track bloodlines without writing. While oral traditions and modern hunter-gatherer societies maintain genealogies back 8 generations, that covers every potential genetic problem. The Sand people of the Kalahari know kinship connections across territories larger than France. Ice Age Europeans had the same skills. Material culture encoded the information. Bead patterns at Sungir show mathematical sequences that could represent counting systems. Carved mammoth ivory from Malta displays notation that might track lunar cycles or generational depth. These weren't decorations, they were data storage. The Sungir burial reveals the system in action. An adult male buried with 8,000 mammoth ivory beads. Each bead took 1 hour to carve. 8,000 hours of work from multiple craftsmen. The bead patterns match sites across Russia and Eastern Europe. This wasn't local production. This was network currency. Beside him lay 2 children, not his offspring. Genetic analysis proves they came from different populations, separated by hundreds of miles, but their grave goods tell another story. Identical spear throwers, matching ivory rods, same symbolic pendants. The children represented alliance marriage promises between distant groups. Exchange married couples carried genetic diversity and cultural information. Language borrowed vocabulary across the network. Tool technologies spread faster than human migration. Innovation in one valley reached another within decades. The breeding network became an information highway. Environmental pressure made the system essential. During the last glacial maximum, European temperatures dropped 15 degrees below modern levels. Growing seasons shrank to 3 months. Megafauna populations crashed. Bad years could kill half a band. Only groups with outside connections survived the worst periods. Ice core data from Greenland shows climate swings of 10 degrees in single decades. Populations without backup networks died out completely. Sites like Grota de Rennes show sudden abandonment, followed by different cultural groups moving in. The marriage networks provided genetic and social insurance. The genetics proved the system worked. Modern Europeans carry DNA from these Ice Age populations. The genetic bottlenecks you'd expect from small, isolated groups never happened. Effective population sizes stayed large even when actual group sizes stayed small. The marriage networks prevented the collapse. Archaeological sites show the cost of failure. Neanderthal remains from their final period show increasing genetic problems. Shortened limbs, asymmetrical features, developmental disorders. They couldn't build the long-distance connections modern humans mastered. When climate pressure peaked, they vanished. At Vindija Cave in Croatia, final Neanderthal layers show tools regressing to simpler forms. Population estimates from mitochondrial DNA suggest groups of 5 to 15 individuals, too small for genetic health, too isolated for cultural innovation. The last Neanderthals were genetic dead ends. The technology required was sophisticated but achievable. Seasonal calendars tracked the timing of gatherings. Astronomical markers in cave art show knowledge of solstices and lunar phases. These weren't primitive people guessing. They calculated optimal meeting times across vast territories. Lascaux Cave contains star maps matching constellations from 17,000 years ago. Pleiades cluster appears in multiple European cave sites with identical accuracy. These hunters tracked celestial timing across the continent. They knew exactly when to travel for marriages. Geographic knowledge reached incredible precision. Ice Age petroglyphs from sites like Abri du Roc-aux-Sorciers show detailed maps of river systems and mountain passes. Hunters knew routes across hundreds of miles of terrain. They could guide marriage partners between distant groups. The Abri Castanet site reveals carved stone maps showing drainage patterns across southwestern France. River junctions, marked with cupels, match modern topography perfectly. Distance calculations built into the carvings show knowledge of travel times between valleys. Navigation systems for marriage networks. Social systems enforce the genetic rules. Kinship taboos in modern hunter-gatherer societies extend to fourth cousins or further. Violating marriage rules brought social death. Exile from the group meant death from cold or predation. The genetic benefits had social enforcement. Isotope analysis of Cro-Magnon remains shows individuals who died alone, far from any settlement. These outliers carry genetic markers, suggesting close inbreeding. Social outcasts who broke the rules and paid with isolation. The system policed itself through survival pressure. Archaeological evidence shows the system breaking down as the ice retreated. Warming temperatures allowed larger local populations. Trade networks shortened. Genetic analysis of Mesolithic remains shows increasing local inbreeding. The pressure that forced long-distance connections had lifted. Post-glacial sites like Starkar show local tool production replacing imported materials. Genetic diversity in Mesolithic populations drops compared to Paleolithic predecessors. The marriage networks dissolved when survival no longer depended on long-distance cooperation. The final proof comes from the bones themselves. Paleogenetic studies of Ice Age remains show heterozygosity levels matching modern populations from much larger groups. These small bands maintained genetic diversity that should have been impossible. Their marriage system was nearly perfect. If you value documented prehistoric history like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. Now back to the story. Recent excavations at Gravettian sites reveal one more detail. Hearth arrangements follow consistent patterns across thousands of miles and thousands of years. 7 fires in a circle, each representing a different bloodline. The same number modern geneticists recommend for sustainable small populations. They got it right the first time. Computer simulations of hunter-gatherer genetics show 7 breeding groups as the minimum for long-term survival. Too few and genetic problems accumulate. Too many and coordination becomes impossible. Ice Age. Europeans found the perfect balance through trial and survival. The evidence extends beyond Europe. Similar patterns appear in Siberian sites like Malta and Buret, mammoth ivory carvings showing interconnected spirals, bead networks extending into Mongolia. Even in the harshest climates, humans built genetic highways. At Beringia, DNA from ancient remains shows populations mixing across the land bridge between Asia and America. The same marriage network strategies that worked in Europe carried humans into the New World. Genetic diversity stayed high, even in founder populations. The system required incredible social coordination. Modern anthropologist studies suggest Ice Age bands needed 7 different specialist roles to survive: hunters, toolmakers, hide processors, firekeepers, healers, navigators, and memory holders. Marriage networks had to balance skills as well as genetics. Burial evidence shows role specialization. Graves with hunting gear cluster in certain age ranges. Graves with craft tools show different patterns. Graves with exotic materials suggest navigation specialists. The marriage networks exchanged expertise along with genes. Archaeological chemistry reveals the complexity. Ochre samples from Gravettian sites match geological sources hundreds of miles away. Not random trade, but systematic procurement. Someone mapped Europe's mineral resources and built supply chains across ice sheets. The Blombos Cave Ochre Workshop shows processing techniques that required specialized knowledge: heat treatment temperatures, mixing ratios, application methods. These skills passed between groups through marriage alliances. Genetic exchange carried technological innovation. Toolstone tells the same story. Flint from specific quarries appears at sites across continental ranges, not occasional trade, but regular supply networks. The marriage system carried economic infrastructure. Genetic diversity funded technological progress. Settlement patterns confirmed the networking. Sites cluster around geographic bottlenecks where travel routes converged: river crossings, mountain passes, coastal landing points. The marriage gatherings happened where geography forced contact. Strategic positioning for genetic exchange. The Vézère Valley in France shows this pattern perfectly. Dozens of decorated caves within walking distance. Rock shelters facing southern exposures for winter warmth. Freshwater sources and natural windbreaks. Perfect conditions for large gatherings during harsh seasons. Carbon dating from multiple Vézère sites shows simultaneous occupation during narrow time windows. Not coincidence, but coordination. Groups converged for marriage negotiations during specific seasons. The decorated caves served as neutral meeting grounds for genetic exchange. Art styles confirm the networking. Similar painting techniques appear across European cave sites with mathematical precision. Hand stencils show consistent measurement systems. Animal depictions follow standardized proportions. The marriage networks shared artistic languages. The Chauvet cave paintings match techniques from caves 500 miles away. Same pigment preparation, same brushstrokes, same symbolic elements. Artists trained in one network node could work at any other. Cultural standardization across genetic boundaries. Musical instruments tell parallel stories. Bone flutes from whole fells match instruments from distant sites. Same fingerhole spacing, same tonal systems. Same decorative patterns. Music carried across the marriage networks. Genetic diversity came with cultural harmony. The system's sophistication shows in its flexibility. When climate shifted, marriage routes adapted. When populations crashed, networks restructured. Archaeological evidence shows the same core groups maintaining connections across millennial timescales despite massive environmental changes. During the Younger Dryas cooling event, settlement patterns shifted southward across Europe, but the marriage networks maintained their structure. Sites in Italy and Spain show the same cultural markers as abandoned northern locations. The system migrated intact. Genetic analysis confirms this flexibility. DNA from pre and post. Younger Dryas populations shows maintained diversity despite geographic displacement. The marriage network survived the climate crisis. Genetic health continued through environmental catastrophe. Modern computational models struggle to match Ice Age genetic maintenance, even with detailed population genetics software. Maintaining diversity in groups under 50 people requires precise partner selection across multiple generations. These hunter-gatherers achieved optimal results without mathematical training. The key was information persistence. Memory specialists maintained genealogical records across generations. Oral traditions encoded genetic compatibility rules in stories and songs. The marriage networks had institutional memory that prevented genetic mistakes. The physical evidence runs deeper than surface finds. Soil analysis from Gravettian hearth sites shows phosphorus spikes indicating repeated human occupation over centuries. These weren't temporary camps, but permanent meeting grounds. Chemical signatures prove the same locations hosted gatherings for 3,000 consecutive years. Microscopic analysis of stone tools reveals manufacturing techniques that required years of training. Pressure flaking patterns at solid tree sites match precision levels achievable only through master-apprentice relationships. The marriage networks didn't just exchange genes, they built technical universities. At Font-Robert in France, archaeologists found tool caches buried in permafrost layers, 47 perfect stone points wrapped in mammoth hide. Carbon dating shows the cache sat untouched for 2,000 years before retrieval. Someone planned ahead. Someone knew future generations would need these tools at this exact location. The cache system extended across continents. Similar buried tool deposits appear at sites from Spain to Siberia. Strategic resource placement for network members. If your group faced disaster, backup supplies waited at known coordinates. The marriage networks built survival insurance. Pollen analysis from cave sediments reveals deliberate plant management. Ice Age groups cultivated medicinal herbs at network meeting sites, willow bark for pain relief, echinacea for immune support, valerian for anxiety. They planted pharmacy gardens at marriage gatherings. The Shanidar cave deposits show this pattern clearly. 9 different medicinal plants appearing simultaneously in layers dated to network gathering periods. These weren't wild growth patterns. Someone selected, transported us, and cultivated healing resources specifically for large group meetings. Parasite loads and coprolites tell another story. Gutworm eggs from network sites show treatment with specific plant compounds. Tansy for roundworms, wormwood for tapeworms, garlic for bacterial infections. The marriage gatherings included medical specialists who treated genetic problems before they became hereditary. Bone chemistry reveals nutritional strategies. Calcium isotopes in Ice Age skeletons show dietary supplementation during pregnancy and childhood. Specific ratios matching modern recommendations for preventing genetic disorders. They understood nutrition affected offspring health. The Cro-Magnon child burials show this knowledge in practice. Infant graves contain ground antler powder, rich in calcium and phosphorus. Shell bead necklaces providing trace minerals. Ochre mixtures with iron content for blood health. They medicated genetics through chemistry. Dental analysis reveals the social structure. Tooth wear patterns show different groups specialized in different food processing techniques. Meat cutting specialists, root grinding experts, bone marrow extractors. The marriage networks balanced dietary expertise across genetic lines. At Abri Patad, tooth grooves show tool use patterns indicating craft specialization. Hide scrapers create specific wear marks. Flint knappers develop different damage patterns. Basket weavers show fiber abrasion. Marriage exchanges carried technical skills between bands. The evidence extends to child development. Growth markers in juvenile bones show consistent nutrition levels despite harsh environmental conditions. Weaning ages standardized across network sites. Someone coordinated child rearing practices to optimize genetic outcomes. Isotope ratios in children's teeth reveal systematic dietary planning. Protein levels maintained during critical growth periods. Mineral supplements provided during bone development windows. The marriage networks treated children as genetic investments requiring precise care. Settlement archaeology shows the gathering infrastructure. Temporary shelters at network sites built to accommodate 50 to 100 people. Stone hearth circles designed for maximum heat efficiency. Waste disposal systems preventing disease outbreaks. They engineered environments for genetic exchange. The Pinsevent site shows this engineering in detail. 16 hearths arranged in mathematical precision for optimal heat distribution. Windbreak walls calculated for prevailing weather patterns. Water drainage systems, preventing flooding during spring gatherings. Purpose-built for marriage negotiations. Tool production scales reveal the economic engine. Lithic workshops at network sites show industrial-level output. Thousands of stone blades manufactured during brief gathering windows. Exchange ratios favoring genetic diversity over immediate utility. Marriage partners came with dowries of technical resources. The Etioles site produced 20,000 stone tools during a single seasonal occupation. Quality levels requiring master craftsmen from multiple traditions. Solitrian precision meets Gravettian efficiency meets Eastern European innovation. Technical fusion through genetic mixing. Raw material sourcing shows the logistics complexity. Flint from specific quarries appears at sites 800 miles away. Not random trade, but systematic provisioning. The marriage networks maintain supply chains across ice sheets for tools that enable genetic exchange. Obsidian from Italian volcanoes reached sites in Poland. Baltic amber traveled to Mediterranean caves. Pyrenees cave paintings use pigments from German mines. The networks move materials impossible for individual bands to access. Genetic diversity funded resource abundance. Artistic evidence reveals the social rules. Cave paintings show consistent taboo symbols across European sites. Geometric patterns, warning against specific bloodline combinations. Visual languages encoding genetic information for illiterate populations. Art as DNA database. The Lascaux astronomical ceiling encodes more than star positions. Mathematical ratios between constellation markers match genetic diversity calculations. The cave paintings weren't just calendars, they were genetic computers painted on stone walls. Hand stencils reveal individual identification systems, unique finger proportions, creating personal signatures. Missing digit patterns, showing injury or deliberate modification. The caves contain biometric databases for tracking bloodlines across generations. At Cueva de las Manos in Argentina, handprints span 8,000 years of continuous use. Same caves, same stenciling techniques, same identification purposes. The marriage network system spread with human migration across continents. Bone modification shows the record-keeping complexity. Carved notation systems on mammoth ribs and reindeer antlers. Tally marks corresponding to lunar cycles and generational depth. Mathematical notation for illiterate societies tracking genetic compatibility. The Ashango bone from Congo shows 20,000-year-old mathematical notation, prime number sequences, and lunar calendar calculations. The same mathematical thinking that built Ice Age marriage networks spread with early human expansion into Africa. Recent excavations reveal the system's adaptive capacity. When mammoth populations crashed, marriage networks shifted to reindeer hunting territories. When sea levels changed, coastal gathering points moved inland. The genetic exchange system evolved with environmental pressure. Climate proxy data shows network resilience during the Heinrich events. Massive ice sheet collapses, disrupting European climate every few thousand years. But genetic diversity maintained consistent levels through each crisis. The marriage network survived repeated environmental disasters. Volcanic ash layers from the Lachamp magnetic reversal event appear in network sites across Europe. Radiocarbon dates show continued occupation during this global catastrophe 40,000 years ago. The marriage system weathered magnetic field collapse and cosmic radiation increases. Archaeological evidence shows network expansion during crisis periods. More distant sites showing cultural connections during environmental stress. Genetic insurance required longer travel distances when local populations crashed. Crisis strengthened rather than weakened the breeding networks. DNA studies of modern European populations reveal the system's lasting impact. Genetic signatures from Ice Age networks persist in contemporary bloodlines. The marriage strategies that survived glaciation continue influencing genetic diversity 20,000 years later. Haplogroup distributions in modern Europeans match Ice Age network patterns. Ancient trade route corridors show up in current genetic maps. The marriage highways became permanent features of European population structure. Ice Age decisions shaped modern genetics. Recent discoveries at Pavlov in Czech Republic reveal the final piece. Carved mammoth ivory showing 7 interconnected spirals, each marked with different bead patterns found at sites across Europe. Radiocarbon dating places the carving at 26,000 years old. The spiral patterns match mathematical models of optimal genetic mixing. Computed tomography scans of the Pavlov carving reveal internal structure invisible to surface examination. 7 chambers within the ivory, each containing different mineral deposits. Chemical analysis traces these minerals to 7 distinct European geological regions. The carving wasn't just a map. It was a genetic contract written in stone and sealed with earth from 7 different territories. At Kostenki, archaeologists found a final gift from the ice. Preserved in permafrost, a carved mammoth tusk showing 7 interconnected spirals, each spiral marked with different bead patterns found at distant sites. The marriage network had a map. They drew their genetic future in ivory, and it kept them alive for 15,000 years. Cold calculation, warm blood, perfect math.